Yesterday, the Prime Minister gave a speech where he claimed Keir Starmer would make the UK less safe as we enter some of the most dangerous years the country's ever seen. And a secure choice was what people were voting for at the next election.
Everything that we're seeing in the world from today, from the last week, last few months, tells me that there's an incredibly dangerous time. And what the country needs, what the country wants, what the country deserves, is to know that there's a secure future for them and their families ahead. That is the choice at the next election.
So he got through an awful lot in the speech, and he basically gave us a kind of background of why we should be worried. These are the words of Albert Einstein here. The world is a dangerous place, he said, not because of those who do evil, but because of those who look on and do nothing. So a key part of this for Sunak is to say, look, there's lightning in the air, there's danger ahead. Starmer in his aircraft isn't going to do it. I will, says Sunak. I'm going to keep you safe. Spotlight was on him yesterday because he made the big speech. So here's his vision of the future. It's pretty apocalyptic. And these are the things he touched on. This is the content in his speech. So artificial intelligence taking our jobs was one thing. Mass global migration, the small boats and so on. Then he talked about another pandemic. No, we'd tear our hair out if there was one. He just mentioned in passing nuclear war, by the way. Cyber attacks, China particularly at the center of those. Already talked about some Chinese spying charges. World War III, mentioned Russia. Threat to democracy, that's about hacking and computers and so on. He went further. He talked about disinformation and online bullying. He then mentioned even a worse economic collapse than 2008. And finally, terrorism. And terrorism may be almost the biggest one, as somebody comes into this country with a chemical weapon or something, God forbid. So you've got two of them. As I say, it was Sunak's day yesterday, but Starmer will respond. He's already said national security will be his first priority and that we would not be less safe under Labour. So, Angela, you start. Who would you choose?
Oh, without question, Sunak. I mean, it's not even a question for me. Look, it's the duty of every government. If you shake your head too much, it's going to go bouncing off your shoulders.
He only started to shake it when you said the word Sunak. It didn't start before that.
Sunak. Just for
you think Sunak would do it?
I think.
Because he's got a record of competence.
No, I tell you what the problem is. The problem is that that's the choice. If there were other choices, maybe the conversation would widen. But in the absence of any alternative candidates, I would vote with Sunak.
When you look at all those areas he touched on, I mean, it's absurd, really. You've got World War III, nuclear war, terrorism. Where would you put your focus?
Well, I think I would start with Iran, who has sponsored all the terrorist threats, not only in Hamas and Hezbollah, but, you know, they see the West as the enemy. They get funding from Russia, who in turn are in bed with China. So this whole cohort of superpowers who are focused on worldwide global destruction and domination.
You're still shaking your head.
Can I say one thing about Starmer?
Well, you're saying a lot.
OK, well, I'm going to say one thing. Starmer is a weather vane politician. He blows which way the wind goes in order to secure his political position. He sat on the shadow bench for 5 years under Corbyn, who wanted to disband the army and has been a lifelong supporter of nuclear disarmament. And he sat there and he campaigned for him and would have had him as your Prime Minister and my Prime Minister.
Well, maybe he's loyal.
Pardon? Well, maybe he's loyal, but if loyalty obscures the fact that he would have put the defence of the realm in some kind of compromising position, then I don't want him leading from the front. Thank you very much.
So Sunak says, vote for me, I'll make you safe. I mean, people watching this programme at home, people's real life experience of this 14 years of Conservative government has been increasing chaos. The opposite to safe. We had austerity where Cameron, the bankers caused the crash, poor people paid for it, poor got poorer, rich got richer. We then had Boris Johnson told people to stay at home. He had parties. We then, just when you thought it couldn't get any worse, you had Liz Truss. She's only in for 49 days. She crashed the economy. Interest rates go sky high. Kids can't afford to buy a house. And then we get Sunak, who flaps around like a wounded bird, desperate for a new policy. Desperate. Every week, last week it was stop the boats. This week, the world's going to be really dangerous, vote for me.
Why does that mean he can't defend us, though?
Because he doesn't understand what's going on. And we do face catastrophe. We face climate change. There was a report this week showing that things are going to be so bad sooner than even the scientists thought, that the world will be too hot for people to live on. What's Sunak doing?
Yeah.
Watering down the green policies. That's how much he cares about real dangers.
It's interesting you say it, because in the list, and I took that out of the papers, I didn't hear the whole speech, I may be wrong. It wasn't one of the headlines.
No, it wasn't. So and it's the one thing we can be almost certain of.
Is that not a big mistake that he's done there?
I don't think that they're mutually exclusive, but if you're looking at a kind of an existential threat of which we have such immediate and catastrophic evidence, you had Russia invading Ukraine, a sovereign nation, basically for territorial expansion.
It's been bogged down in a war against a country which is a tenth of its size. It's had a few advances this week. It can't even beat Ukraine, which is a tenth of its size. And we're told to believe that it threatens us.
Yes, because you have a megalomaniac.
Yeah, a megalomaniac that can't even beat a tiny country a tenth of its size.
Attack in this country.
I don't like Putin.
And who is a wounded bird and an egotistical maniac, and who, because of that defeat, may think, well, I've got no alternative but to press the red button.
Well, then we're all gone, aren't we?
Exactly. So the planet's gone before you start.
Yeah, but we're all gone once anybody starts pressing nuclear buttons.
But it's because the Russian threat's really interesting, because the amazing thing is that Russia and China seem to be linking arms on all this. You know, they're walking in step with each other, which is really, really worrying, Middle East-wise.
Anti-Iran, North Korea.
And Ukraine and everything else. So someone's got to break them up, right? Now, how do we do that? How do we make them dislike each other a bit more?
I think that's a kind of it's a vital question, but separate from the defence question.
Right.
And I don't necessarily buy that completely. China wants to trade with us. China virtually has got the biggest economy in the world. It wants to sell the stuff to us. Okay, we're in some ideological conflict with China and with Russia. But the idea they are about to invade, in Taiwan you might be worried. In Ukraine they're doing despicable things, Russians are. The idea that we are threatened from, this is the politics of fear. This is Sunak creating the politics of fear because he can't do anything else. He's lost everything else.
Maybe we could just basically sit in our gardens and say, crisis, what crisis? As they said in the 70s, we'll leave it. Love your calls on this. Now your calls on who the UK is safer with, Sunak or Starmer. Sally in Surrey, Sunak or Starmer?
Definitely Starmer, without question. I have to say, I love Angela. I think I'm very entertained by her opinions and listen to her with great interest. But on this matter, I couldn't disagree more. I think that Sunak is, I call him the schoolboy, because he comes over like some bumptious lad who's speaking at some school rally. I don't find that he's got a single opinion that is of any value. I think Starmer would take care of the population, and ultimately he would provide a more nurturing society, which is completely in contrast to what Sunak offers.
Yes, but we could be well nurtured and then somebody invades us. We're talking here about the defence of the realm. Now, he might, if he's a nice guy, you might argue that he'll when he comes to renewing Trident, he'll think, I'd rather spend that on hospitals.
It hasn't actually done anything. He should spend that money on I believe he should spend that money on public services, because we need public services more than we need a deterrent. The deterrent hasn't actually done anything. What has it deterred?
Well, of course.
Last time they tried it out, it didn't work. It just went plop, didn't it?
Well, there was a misfiring torpedo. That's right.
Twice.
But last time they tried it out was probably Nagasaki and Hiroshima. But anyway, yeah.
Sally, could I?
Go on, Sally.
The world is in utter chaos at the moment. We have wars and the usual humans behaving like belligerent apes all over the planet. And the nuclear deterrent doesn't seem to have deterred anything. We are still in war in various parts of the world.
I hear you.
My belief is this country is in absolute chaos because public services have been eroded to a point where nothing functions.
Okay,
a good society needs those.
I hear you, Sally. So the Sally's point is, don't start thinking about spending more on defence. Spend it on hospitals and our poor.
Yeah, I'm sorry to use the phrase again, Sally, but they two are not mutually exclusive. Well, one thing I wanted to ask you about Starmer, and thank you for the kind words at the beginning of your comments, is Do you think he will be able to control the hardline activists on the left flank of his party once he's in? Because some of the, you talked about belligerent, ugly behaviour that we've seen. There's a lot of hardline activism, and he's easily swayed by those who wield the most power internally. And one of the things that I should have said at the beginning about Starmer is I am concerned about that in terms of having a cohesive party when it comes to defence.
Well, he's thrown out Diane Abbott. What do you think, Sally? Can he control the left?
I think he could, actually, because one thing we must remember is that Keir Starmer has reached the top of his profession as a legal person. He's a highly, highly trained legal mind. And I think that he keeps his cards close to his chest. He's extremely capable of understanding the nuances. And I think he could. I really think he could show us enormous strength in his leadership.
All right. Thank you, Sally. Michael in Kent, Starmer or Sunak?
Sunak, definitely. And funny enough, Sally just now has confirmed to me why it should be Sunak. She said that we should spend the money on services, which quite rightly we need to, but she basically was saying services trump defence because we haven't had to use the defence. But the whole point, if you've got a strong defence, your possible invaders think twice. And if Ukraine had had the defence we've got, they might not be invaded by Russia now. So yeah. Sunak every day.
Is it? Yeah. I mean, whether or not we need a nuclear weapon, who are we going to fire it at, Michael, realistically?
But the point is, unless you can come up with some other means of defending the country and carry out a record that we've had over many years since the Second World War, I don't think you can be so frivolous to throw away the defence.
Michael, who cut defence? The Tories, David Cameron cut defence from the last Labour government. All this does is take us back to even less than it was when Labour were last in. And also, I'm not a big fan of Starmer either. Angela knows that. But let's just remember what it was like under Labour. We didn't have these huge waiting lists. Cancer patients were seen straight away. There was enough money for the health service. I know we then had the crash, right, but the Tories have made it worse. They cut defence, it's ludicrous. And now suddenly, when he's, again, flapping around trying to come up with a new idea, well, we're going to put up defence again now, having cut it.
A fair point, but there wasn't the global volatility that there is now. It is absolutely clear that Iran, as I said before, is the key existential threat.
To us or to Israel?
Yeah, okay.
All of them.
There's a kind of linear connection
the world
there.
has been in a mess for about 4,000 or 5,000 years.
It has, but if you
we've got
look
television news now, which is what makes us aware of all these conflicts.
Yeah, absolutely.
But 100 years ago, we were having 2 world wars on the trot. I don't know, is that worse now?
No, because what we're having now is the war against terror, which I think is something quite separate. I mean, the world wars were terrible, the catastrophic loss of life.
Is there any such thing as a war against terror?
The war against terror is about people who threaten our very safety, our values and our existence, and will use any kind of violent...
Wars are between states, right? They're not from one state to an idea. That doesn't work.
Well, why is the war in Israel called a war then?
Well,
it's Israel. It's a sovereign territory versus a death cult that invaded an unprovoked attack.
Tony in Suffolk, hi.
Hi there. Yeah,
Sunak or Starmer, Tony?
I don't trust either of them. I don't think they're strong enough. And I think the gentleman on the show summed it up really. We're just puppets to America. I'm fed up with all these wars and everything and taking sides. Putin's no threat to us. And we're told all the while, Putin's going to invade somewhere else after Ukraine. No, he's not. I mean, if you look into the politics of it all, he will take his bit of Ukraine and that war will end. So I want us to stop funding Israel and put it to a public vote.
And then when he went into Ukraine, it affected every single person in this country in different ways, whether it was vegetable oil being more expensive or, heating and lighting at home being more expensive. It was really, really a bad winter for everyone. So we have got an interest in things that go on a long way away.
Yes, but you sum that up as well. Put gas and electric back into our national grid. We rely too much on foreign stuff anyway.
Yeah.
If we talk now with Putin, I'm sure this war could end.
Yeah, we need peace there. We need
Well,
to
just
talk
say how much of Ukraine would you like?
Well,
exactly.
Some of it is kind of Russian anyway. I mean, it's ludicrous that they're going to take back Crimea. It's kind of more Russian than Ukrainian.
Well,
Clearly, there's going to have all wars end with peace talks. All wars end with compromise. This war is unwinnable by both sides. A 10-year-old could notice that bit.
Well, Putin might get taken out. You
I was going to say.
And the people behind him are even worse.
Well, they may be,
told.
but they may be even less competent as well. Let's see. Shane in South Yorkshire, Sunak or Starmer, who's going to keep us safe?
None of them, I believe. Thank you very much for having you on the show.
Okay, none of them. But if you had to choose, right, we're going to have one or the other as Prime Minister unless something very strange happens. Which one of them? Come on.
I think the Reform Party will end up being in party. I don't think Starmer is a Republican at heart. If you've seen what he did in his previous, he doesn't really like the royal family. That's my beliefs, and he's
say someone like Richard Tice or Farage.
Pardon?
You want someone like Richard Tice or Farage running the country?
Yes, because they understand what it's like to be a British working man who has to go to work every day. And you see this at the minute. You're watching the news. Everybody's more concerned about everything else that happens around the world. They're not concerned about a man who goes to work and a British family who's trying to get a house, who's trying to build a family and build a life. You can't be safe either which way. You're worrying about spending money abroad, Israel and Russia and Ukraine. What about spending the money and helping homeless men that have already served in our national services and helping them? What about their children? Helping them.
Okay.
What about all this debt and everything like that? You know, when it comes to the leaders, Sunak, what's Sunak done in the last, 2 years? What's he done? Nothing. He's trying to chase cryptocurrency, saying that we're going to be like the Hong Kong and the stable coin market of the world.
Okay.
That's chasing money that's never going to be ours
that's a separate
anyway.
thing, Shay. All right, thank you. Thank you very much indeed. That was fascinating.